Welcome to the Stepmom Side with Alicia Crasco, the podcast for stepmoms ready to create the life they want and one they actually have a say in. Here we talk all things stepmom life and just a little bit more. Leave the superficial conversations at the door and get ready for perspective shifts and actionable advice to help you on your way to creating the life you want, one step at a time. Hey, welcome to this week's episode of the Stepmom Side podcast. Every single week that I sit down, or every single time I should say that I sit down to record a podcast episode, I'm like, you know what I should do is there we go with the should, would, coulds that set you up for failure, right? I should sit down with notes about what I'm going to do. I really only do notes, barely, if I'm interviewing someone else. And I'm always like, what do I want to ask them? Okay, let me crash and do a 10-minute crash session of note taking right before I start recording with them. But this week, I just want to talk to you about 10 things to know as a new stepmom. So if you're a new stepmom, hey girlfriend, welcome. This stepmom role gig, whatever you want to call it, is going to be the wildest ride of your life. It's going to be one of the hardest things that you've ever done. And if you're sitting there thinking oh, Alicia, I've done some hard things. Yeah, me too. But this is really wild because it's going to bring up emotions that you didn't know that you would have, or it's going to make you act in certain ways that you're going to look back and be like, oh, maybe I shouldn't have done that. So if you're oh yeah, I've done really hard things before, I'm welcome to being a stepmom where it's going to test everything that you've ever done or known before, life as a stepmom. It's wild. So I just want to run through 10 things that I wish I would have known, or 10 things not 10 things I wish I would have known, but 10 things to know as a new stepmom. And here's the thing, this is a freebie that I have, so I'm going to link it after, in the show notes, so that way you have it if you go to aliciacrasco.com/10 things, that's where you'll find it. And so it's just a simple thing, so that way you have it and you can just be okay, she talked about this in her podcast episode number 32. I'm going to be able to hear her talking about it when I'm looking at this checklist of things that I need to know as a new stepmom. So without further ado, let's get to it because it's going to be fun. So the first thing to know that being a stepmom is it's just going to be hard. You will feel running, literally running, running away from the relationship, running away from your house, running away from all of it. And if you're new here and you haven't listened to any of my stuff, I spent the first year of my relationship the first year of my marriage with my husband Googling how to get divorced, because this is so freaking hard. You don't realize that, oh my gosh, this role is really hard. You have no idea what you're signing up for. You've got to deal with an ex, you've got to deal with kids that maybe you've never had kids before, you've never been around kids, or you've never, I don't know, had to deal with the chaos of them, and you're just what is happening? Or you didn't realize how triggering it would be to be with your partner all of the time and be the center of their attention or center of their world. And then the kids come over and now all of a sudden you're not the center of your partner's world, and you're just what is happening? So you're going to feel running because you're overwhelmed, you're stressed out, you're frustrated, you're tired, all of the things. Hear me, don't run. Do not run. And if you're anything like me or the stepmoms that I've coached, maybe you think that oh my gosh, this is too much, I'm just gonna run. And then you get a hold of yourself and you're I can't run. If I run, they win. Whoever it is that they is, right? Whether it's the other house or the kids or the in-laws or whoever it is that's causing you stress. Maybe it's just, letting your insecurities win. That could be who they is. So it's going to be hard. You're going to feel like running, but listen to me now. Don't run. Don't run. So that's number one. There's help. There's support. Get it. We'll talk more about that in a bit. Number two, boundaries are your friend and people won't like them. So if you are a recovering people pleaser and you have finally kicked that bucket out of sight, me too, it's going to be hard to not revert back to that because you're new in this situation and you want everyone to like you and you You're like, oh, I'm going to do all the right things. Just be careful. I understand that mentality and understand why you do it, because I did it too. But at some point, you're going to look back and say, I'm doing this again. I'm people pleasing again. And I don't have any boundaries. And then you're going to say, okay, at what cost am I willing to keep going down this path of not having any boundaries or not asserting myself? And then you're going to get pissed, and there's going to be a lot of anger, and you're going to decide that you're going to set glow in the dark boundaries, as my husband said. And here's the thing about that. If you set boundaries, and you don't even have to go and be like, hey, I'm setting boundaries with you. You are no longer allowed to do whatever. It doesn't have to be like that. You can just set boundaries and you're setting them. But here's the thing. If you are setting boundaries, or if you don't have boundaries set, and then you decide that you're going to set them, people that are going to have a problem with it are people that have been able to benefit from you not having boundaries, or benefit from you doing whatever to like make people like you. Those are the people that are going to have a problem with it. So take note of that. Like if somebody's giving you pushback, somebody's going to give you pushback because it benefited them for you to not have boundaries. Here's the thing. They are hard to set. I'm going to be straight up with you. They're really hard to set. And I used to be like, I'm going to enforce them 100% of the time. Okay. And when you're thinking about boundaries, you're probably like, I'm going to set one about this, and one about that, and one about this, and one about that, and one about this. So now you've got 300 boundaries, or maybe, let's just be realistic here. So now you've got maybe 20 boundaries that you've just set. And now you've got all of this pressure on yourself to enforce all 20 of them 100% of the time. And listen to me, my friend. If you are multitasking, please come back to me. It is almost virtually impossible to enforce that many boundaries 100% of the time. And so what's going to happen is you're going to slip. You're going to make a mistake. You're going to forget to enforce it, or life is going to happen. And it was just easier that one-off chance to just like go with the flow. And then you're going to start to spiral. You're going to start to berate yourself. Maybe you're going to not speak so kindly to yourself, like all of these things. And it starts the cycle of like, I'm never going to be good enough. I'm never, like all of these things. And I don't want you to get into that cycle. So I'm going to give you a little bit of advice here. If you decide that you're going to set boundaries, great. I love that. That's amazing. I'm also going to link a thing for boundaries here at the end of this, in the show notes. Just do like an 80-20. Like 80% of the time you enforce them, 20% of the time you don't. So that way you've got a little bit of leeway. And that's typically what I do now, over 12 years in. 80 to 20% of the time, 80% of the time I enforce them, 20% of the time I'm like, whatever. Because at this point, people know where they stand and it's okay. But just know that going in, if you are struggling with asserting yourself or saying no or not doing things that you don't want to do, you don't have to be perfect at it. Give yourself a little bit of grace. Change is hard for everyone. Even if you want it, like obviously you want to set boundaries, obviously you want change, but it's still hard. So give yourself a little bit of grace to make a mistake or not enforce it. Don't get down on yourself. Just remember this. There's always next time. There's always next time. So boundaries are your friend and people won't like them. Number 3, there will be things that throw you off unexpectedly. So let's just like go with the boundary thing. Okay, all of a sudden, like you are awesome at setting boundaries. You are awesome at maintaining them. You are awesome. Like you are so good. And then bam, the shoe drops. And you're like, what in the world? Like something out of nowhere happens that you were not expecting. Maybe it's like all of a sudden the other house is like, hey, like let's do a joint birthday party. And you're like, wait, what? No. And so it brings up all of these emotions. And there's something, something that I have seen a lot within the last few months is, so many times people think like, oh, I'm healed and I'm so good at this. Like when a situation arises, I'm going to be good at this. And then said situation arises and you're not good at it. Time. Growth and healing is not linear. You will get better. There will be like a little chart where you're like, drop, drop. It's not just like, I'm good all the way across. Like it's just gonna take you time. Please give yourself a little bit of grace. Like when something comes up unexpectedly, another thing I would tell you is that your partner doesn't deserve to know 100% of the things that you think. All of those things don't need to come out of your mouth. There are things that you cannot unhear that they have said, and there are going to be things that you say that they also cannot unhear. So just be mindful of like what you're saying. And look, we've all been there. We've all said things that we shouldn't have said. We've all done things that we shouldn't have done. So just give yourself a little bit of grace. Maybe that should be like the name of this podcast, like give yourself grace. It's not going to be, but like give yourself some grace as a stepmom. Number 4, it's not you, it's what you represent. And you might be sitting there thinking, you know what, Alicia, you don't understand because, the ex says this, or the kids do that, or my partner says this, or he holds me, accountable for things that like his past, whatever relationships did to him or her or whatever. But here's the thing. It's not you, it's what you represent. You and I could switch places right now today. And I would be treated the exact same way at your house or in your situation. And you could come in and you would be treated the exact same way, had we had like the history and stuff. But it's not you, it's what you represent. You represent that your partner's moved on. You represent that the parents aren't together again. You represent, maybe it's that now your house is the strict house, which isn't necessarily a bad thing. But it's not you. It's the role that you're playing in everyone else's life. It's what you represent. So as easy as it is for me to sit here and say, don't take it personally. Yeah, that would be great. Like if you would have said that to me 7 years ago, 6 years ago, 8 years ago, hey, Alicia, how about you not take this personally? I would have been like, yeah, how about F you? That's not going to work for me. I am taking it personally. So just remember, it's not you, it's what you represent. It's your role. If you were the aunt, if you were the cousin, if you were the neighbor, the friend, whatever, you would be okay. You would be okay. You would be able to say and do the things that you are saying and doing. It's because you're a stepmom. And it's wild. And maybe you've thought this too. Like, if you weren't the stepmom, maybe you would get along better with the other house. If you were like friends with them or maybe coworkers with them or whatever. Maybe not. Like, let's be honest, maybe not. But had you guys met under different circumstances, maybe you would be friends. But again, it's not you. It's what you represent. Moving on to number 5, it may get worse before it gets better. It may get worse before it gets better. And hear me out on this. I know that that's not uplifting. I know that that's not encouraging. But that's the reality of the situation. So let's say, I'm going to give you like a real life example. So let's say that you as the new stepmom, me, come in and you're like, what in the hell is happening? Like, there's a lot of craziness here. Like, what is going on? I don't even know what to expect. Like, sometimes the kids can do things. Sometimes they can't do things. I'm like, what is happening? And I'm the adult and I'm confused. I can only imagine how confused the kids are. Let's set up some house expectations, which if you don't have house expectations, they are a game changer. Having said that, implementing them might not go so well. Maybe right now you're like, oh yeah, we set up rules for our house. I go with expectations, but rules for our house that the other house is supposed to do, and the other house doesn't follow along with them. And so then if you try to enforce those rules at your house, it's, why are you doing that? You're, all of the things. Again, change is hard for everyone. Even if it's wanted, even if it's needed, even if it's the best thing, it's still really hard. Or you coming into the situation signifies to the other house that, hey, this person has moved on. There's a new lover or a new person in their life. Your kids now have somebody else that's loving and caring for them, which might sound like a great thing or is a great thing, but that's not always received well. So maybe all of a sudden there's a lot of conflict. Maybe there's a lot of like back and forth. Maybe there's a lot of drama. Maybe there's a lot of whatever. Everyone, please listen to me, my friend. Everyone needs time to settle into their new normal. And this is weird. It's like a weird time. Just hang on. Everyone needs time to settle into the new normal. And those boundaries here are going to be your friends when it comes to this. Number 6. Your feelings are completely normal and valid. Feelings are completely normal and valid. When you become a new stepmom, like I spoke about this at the very beginning, there's going to be days where you are overwhelmed with, I don't know what the hell I'm supposed to do. I don't know how I'm supposed to navigate this. I don't know what to do. I don't know what my role is. I'm frustrated that I signed up for this. Like, I don't like this. I don't want to be doing this anymore. But I also love my partner so much. Like, they make it worth it when it's just the two of us. But then when you factor in all of these other things, it's like, damn, like, I actually don't like the rest of it though. Or maybe you feel insecure. Maybe your relationship is new and maybe they were together for a really long time. And so you're like, well, our relationship is never going to measure up. Our relationship will never be special enough. Or if you plan on having kids, well, it's not going to matter that much to my partner because they've already been through this. It's not their first. So it's never going to be special enough. And while it might not be their first kid ever, it's their first kid with you, which is completely different. So just know that, like, your feelings are valid. They're completely normal. I typically don't speak in absolutes, but I would venture to say that almost every single stepmom that I have talked to has probably experienced one of those deep, dark thoughts that you would never tell anyone about. Ever. Actually, I'll share the story with you. Like, a year and a half ago, I did some research, about stepmoms and whatever, and I had asked my Instagram people, like, hey, you want to participate in some research that I'm doing? And one of the questions was, what is one thing that would make your role as a stepmom, your life as a stepmom, that much easier? And so, we would talk and I would get an answer, and then a few minutes into answering that part of the question, the stepmom would kind of warm up and be like, okay, I see that Alicia's not going to judge me. Like, I can tell her anything. And they would say, can I be honest with you? Of course, absolutely. That's what I would really like you to be. And they would say, it would be a lot easier if we could make someone disappear. And I'm like, yeah, I bet that would be the case in your situation. So if you have thoughts like that, just know that you're not the only one that's thought things like that. Number 7, keep your hobbies so you don't lose yourself. Here is one of the biggest pitfalls that I see stepmoms do. They start dating somebody that's got kids and they're like, oh my gosh, I'm going to go all in, because you know that if you don't go all in, you don't love the kids. And if you are even a little bit out, it's because you don't like them. Like, I mean, you're caught between a rock and a hard place, right? It's a catch-22. It's a double-edged sword. Like, if you go all in, just remember that they're not yours. But if you don't go all in, it's because you don't love them. And if you step out, it's because you definitely don't love them. And if you step out, it's because you're the evil stepmom. Well, like, what is it? Like, where's the balance, right? So keep the hobbies because those keep you you. So if you always, meet friends for dinner or drinks or whatever on a specific night of the week, keep doing that. If you go to an art class or a pottery class or a workout class, or if you garden or if you run or whatever the case may be, keep those hobbies. Keep being you. I definitely did this. I was like, oh, I'm going to forget, that I even have friends, or I'm going to forget that I've got all of these other things that I like to do, and I'm just going to jump in full force as a stepmom. And then when I came up for a breath of air, I was like, wait a minute. I'm miserable. I don't even do anything that I like to do. I don't even know who I am anymore. And right now, I don't even like me. Like, I'm irritable, kind of a bitch. Like, this is not a good look. And then I'm like, what the hell happened? And I'm like, oh, I took on everything and I was doing it all. And my husband was like, yeah, well, we didn't ask you to do all of that, which really pissed me off. But also, like, he was true and he was right. He didn't ask me to take on all of these other things because, you've heard me say this before too. Like, I'm so good at running my life. Like, here, let me run yours. I'm so much better at it. That doesn't work as a stepmom. Like, you can't do that. You can't fix something that you didn't break. You can't come in and just take over and expect everyone just be like, okay, we're going to go with what Alicia says or whatever you say today. That's not how this works. It's not how it works. So just keep doing you. Keep being you. Keep doing the things that bring you joy. Don't let that go. Number 8, I told you I was going to talk about this later. Get support early and often. And I know you're probably thinking like, yeah, Alicia, it's easy for you to say because you're a stepmom coach, blah, blah, blah. No, I'm saying that because just like keep your own hobbies, like it's going to keep you sane. Get support early and often is because I don't know about you, but when I became a stepmom, I didn't have a handbook that said, okay, to be a stepmom, number 1, do this. Number 2, do this. Number 3, do this. Number 4, do this. Number 5, do that. I didn't have that. It sure would have been a hell of a lot easier. However, I don't know how beneficial it would have been because your situation is probably totally different than mine, which is totally different from somebody else's and totally different from somebody else's. But as a stepmom coach, I can tell you the stepmoms that I've coached across the board, all of the stressors and struggles are basically the same. They're tweaked a little bit to everyone's own individual family dynamic, but basically they're exactly the same across the board. The insecurities, all of the emotions, the what the hell am I doing, the okay, now I kind of have a good grip on like what I'm doing, but I just need you to help me tweak a few of these little things. And then the end part of it is they're like, hey, Alicia, I don't need you anymore. I don't need you to coach me anymore because I'm good. Like you've got me set up with all of these tools that I can just pull out and utilize and deploy them like whenever I need to. And I'm like, that's awesome. Like as sad as I am to see like somebody go, like I'm also like clapping you up like, hell yeah, I'm so pumped that you can stand on your own 2 feet and you don't need me as a crutch anymore. Like that is the objective for coaching. I don't want it to be a lifelong thing. I want you to come in when you need the help. Like I've got stepmoms that I coach, like I'm basically on a retainer for them. Like they buy the coaching sessions and I'm like, use them when you need to use them. I don't have them set up like, okay, you're going to have a coaching session today and I'll send you a follow-up email within the next 24 hours. And then I'm going to see you back here in 2 weeks. And I'm going to send you another email. And back in 2 weeks, I'm going to send you another email. And back in 2 weeks, and now you're out of your 4 sessions. That's not how it works. That's great, like in the beginning, because then you can kind of get like a good action plan of like what we're doing and we can tweak things in real time. And you get email support in between coaching calls. But if you are further along in your stepmom journey and not that many things bother you, or you just need maintenance, if you will, you get to use the support calls, the coaching calls whenever you want. I don't know why I just call them support calls, but the coaching calls whenever you want. It's not you have to use them by this amount of time. There is no expiration date on them. So get support early and often, because unless you're a stepmom, you don't get it. Like there are so many crazy things that happen, so many things that pop up. Jealousy is the biggest thing, whether it's jealousy of your partner and like the attention that you're not getting, jealousy of one or both or all of your stepkids, or jealous of like a specific one or the other one, or jealous of the ex, or whatever the case may be, or your partner's life before you came along. There's just like things that come out of nowhere that, like number 3, there will be things that throw you off unexpectedly that you're just like, where the hell did this come from? So if you've got a coaching package with me, something comes up out of nowhere, you can just shoot me an email and be like, hey, Alicia, this just happened. What the fuck? Like, okay, maybe not that, but like I've had stepmoms say that, like, because I know them well enough to know that I can like hear it in their voice and, maybe I laugh along with them, or I can like read their sarcasm in the email. But you can get support without utilizing one of your coaching calls. So if you're looking for support, hey girlfriend, I would be happy to help you through this treacherous part of being a stepmom, with the end game of being, I want you to be able to stand on your own and like do your own thing. I don't want you to be completely dependent on me forever. Number 9, prioritize your mental health. It's okay to step back. Kind of like I said earlier, it's like it's damned if you do and damned if you don't. Like if you go all in, like remember you're not their mom. If you step back, it's because you hate them, right? But you're human. Like let's start there. You're human. There's only so much that you can take. There's only so much that anyone can take before they just snap. And honestly, it's not worth it. It's not worth the turmoil in your relationship, the turmoil in your marriage, the turmoil within like your relationship with the kids even. It's not worth it. So if you feel like that heart's beating out of your chest, your hands are sweaty just thinking about a certain situation, specifically looking at transition days. And if you're struggling with transition days, go back and listen to podcast episode number 30. It's called Real Talk Transition Days, and I go through like a bunch of different things there. I will also link that in the show notes. But it's like the weirdest thing, because there's all of these like societal pressures of like showing up and doing all of the things, but then also like the imposter syndrome, all of the emotions, all of the weirdness, all of the awkwardness, all of the I'm trying to heal my own self over here and I don't even know what's going on. So what would really be helpful is if I could just like step back for a second. And there is a special power, listen to me, there is a special power in being able to say, I'm just the stepmom. Like, I can tap out of this one. And I don't mean like I'm just the stepmom, I can't do anything. I mean, this is you stepping into your power and being like, hey, I'm just the stepmom. I'm going to sit this one out. and not letting that control you. When people would say to me, oh, Alicia, you're just the stepmom. It used to piss me off because I was like, but I'm showing up and I'm doing all of these other things. I'm doing all of the things that like their mom would do. Maybe not all of them, but quite a bit of them. Not that I was trying to be their mom, but also like, could I get some sort of recognition? And then when they'd be like, you're just a stepmom, I'd be like, you're right, I am just the stepmom. I'm just chilling over here, doing my own thing. But I still showed up for them, but it was just like a mental shift for me that really helped. So prioritize your mental health. And if you're like, how do I work through that? I think it's episode number 3. I'll link that one. Listen, I'm like, I'll link this and I'll link that. We'll link that one in the show notes too. Embracing being just the stepmom. It's just a mental shift. So prioritize your mental health. It's okay to take a step back. I kind of talk about that in there. And number 10, the last one, this is going to be a shorter episode. So this last one, number 10, your relationship is worth it. And I can't answer that for you. I can't say like, oh yeah, your relationship is worth it. Or, you guys should stay together. Or you should do all of these things or all of those things or whatever the case may be. You're the only one that gets to dictate that. You're the only one that knows if your relationship is actually worth it. So when it comes to thinking like, okay, is my relationship worth it? Should I stay? Should I run? Why am I Googling how to get divorced? And here's what, I've never actually spoke about this on the podcast or anywhere, actually. I've talked about Googling how to get divorced, but I never have talked about like why I never actually like hit submit for like, let's get divorced. Not that I'd ever filled out paperwork or anything either. But I knew that my relationship was worth it. Like, abso-freaking-lutely crazy about my husband. And when it was just us, like, I couldn't get enough of the guy. Like, I'm all these years in now and still, like, if we are together and I have something that I need to do, but we're like in the house together and it's just us, we don't get anything done because I will sit and hang out and talk to him. Like today, he's out, but I sat and talked to him for like an hour. Granted, I was like pacing around my house, right? Because I'm like, let me get my steps in. But I talked to him for like an hour and I'm like, I have to get off the phone with you. Like, I'm never going to get anything done. But that's what I'm saying. My relationship with him was worth it because I'm like, this is my person. I, Alicia, as my own person, I need to learn how to deal with all of this extra stuff that's coming with it. Because here's the reality of the situation, my friend. I very easily could have gotten a divorce and gone and dated somebody else and got married to somebody else. Now, would that person have the same morals and values and things that I liked about my husband in them? I don't know. But I always tell myself they wouldn't. Like, my husband's honest. He's trustworthy. He's a stand-up guy. Like, he would do anything for me. Like, I'm not going to list everything here for you because I'm sure that you feel to a degree something like that about your own partner. But if you are going to be, like, 1 foot out the door, if you're looking for the negative, you're going to see the negative, right? And so I was like, okay, I'm going to focus on the positive. It's like my husband told me, like, you're the only one that complains about anything. And I'm like, yeah, it's because I'm the only one that sees it because everyone else thinks that it's normal and it's not. But what you think about, you bring about. So if you're focusing on the negative, all you're going to see is the negative. If you're focused on the positive, not always, but more chances than not, you're going to see the positive. And that's in your relationship. That also, like, flows down to, like, your stepkids. If you are constantly like, I can't stand them, I don't want to be around them, I'm dreading them coming over, how do you think that visit's going to go? It's going to go just like that. It's going to be dreadful. You're not going to enjoy it. But if you're like, okay, you know what, when they come over, things are a little more lax. Maybe you don't like that, but, like, we're going to pretend like things are a little more lax. Like, we'll get to play a bunch of board games. So you can think about, like, what board games could we play? Or where could we go on an adventure? Or what ice cream flavors could we go out for? Or whatever the case may be. Your relationship with your partner is worth it. And your relationship with your partner, this is super controversial, but your relationship with your partner should be the priority. Your kids or the kids are your partner's responsibility and your responsibility, but your relationship should be the priority. So if you guys are good and you guys have taken care of each other and you guys are solid, that's going to flow down to the kids. It's all going to be okay. And if you're like, okay, I need you to help me through this. I need to, like, figure out, like, what is working and what isn't working, send me a message on Instagram. I also just joined TikTok, so you can find me at Alicia Crasco. Super easy, like all platforms, at Alicia Crasco. Try to keep it easy. But yeah, send me a message, and I'm happy to chat with you through things, or if you're like, you know what, I have something that's bigger going on and I need a little more support and I want more than just like your opinion, join our community, the Stepmom Side community. Every Wednesday, we have office hours from 2 p.m. Eastern time to 4 p.m. Eastern time. Every second Tuesday of the month, we've got group coaching. And if no one shows up for group coaching because maybe it's an odd time for them, it's like your own personal coaching session. So if you're looking for a community of stepmoms to join, we'd love to have you on the inside. Everyone gets to know each other quite well. But these are the 10 things that I wish that I would have known, or these are the 10 things to know as a new stepmom. Because there is no playbook. There is no guide. There is no handbook. There is no here's how to be a stepmom. And if you want to keep like a little tally of these, like I said, I will link them in the show notes of like where you can get it. Just know that you're not alone and know that I'm here for you. I will chat with you. I almost said I will see you next week, but I will chat with you next week. Thanks for taking time to listen to this week's episode. If anything was helpful or resonated with you, please share it on social media and tag me. I'm just at Alicia Crosco. And if you could leave a 5-star rating and a review while you're at it, that would also be really helpful. And if you find yourself struggling with your stepmom journey and you want a little bit more support without the hefty price tag of coaching, you might want to check out the Stepmom Side community, which is my own private community for stepmoms, where you get to connect with other stepmoms around the world and myself, where I hold weekly office hours and monthly group coaching. It's kind of like you have your own personal coach in your own back pocket. Again, without that hefty price tag. See you next week.